Absolutely.
So you was up in Liverpool one time?
Yeah, I was up in Liverpool, a Chelsea nut I am, and so went to Anfield. First time I've ever been there, and I found it, I loved it. And them supporters are like an extra player. And when they sing that Walk On or the Fields of Anfield Road, you know, I was in awe of it. The atmosphere was incredible. And I had a sort of a mauve shirt on and a little hat and a pair of like sort of loud coloured trousers. And there was we were segregated away from the Liverpool supporters, but the only thing separating us was a yellow tarpaulin and about 20 Scouse cozzers. It was like a little bit. He was a little bit intimidated. Anyway, this geezer, I kept looking at this fella, and he went, "Who are you looking at?" You know, in that lovely accent, which I love.
Who you looking at?
Who you looking at? That's it. So I said, "I'm looking at you, mate." So he called me a gay old puff. So no, a gay old something. I can't remember what. But I didn't like the old. I was okay with the gay bit, and I had £1,000 in my pocket, and I've embarrassed myself and said, "Yeah, look, what you got? No money." You know what they say? You know, it's terrible. They sing a song about signing on, the Liverpool supporters signing on. And so I pulled £1,000 out of my pocket, and he says to his mate, "Oh, look, he wants to have sex with me. He wants to pay for sex." So I'm getting agitated, and he threw this burger at me, hamburger, and it whistled past me, literally whistled past me. And standing next to me, a big Chelsea supporter, big black fella, big Jamaican fella, must have weighed about 20 stone, and it caught him. And the fella said, "Who done that? Who done that?" I said, "It was him, mate." And it caused a little bit of ag, a little bit of carnage. The police earned their money.
So here we are with Michael Emmett, and you guys watched us with Joey Pyle Jr. So Michael's dad was Joey Pyle's dad's crime partner. So, and Michael's just got a huge life story as well. Thanks for coming on, Michael.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Your agent sent me a list of things here.
Oh, okay.
And he said to start with abuse.
Yeah.
Bit of a dark note, but let's
I
do it.
I know. Yeah, abuse. Well, it was. I don't want to broadcast it too much, but it was sexual abuse. And you know, the reason why I start with that, because it played a major part in my life. It affected me a lot. I was in denial about it. But I was sexually abused by the babysitter.
Oh, jeez.
I was 5. And I suppose, I was 5, yeah. So how unwell were they? And it never happened loads of times, but 2 or 3 times is enough for a kid of that age. And it sort of opened up. I had a wonderful mother, and so my opinion of women in the deepness of my soul was I had this beautiful mother, and I had this abuse. So I had a mixture. It was an opposite of my values of what women were like. And it followed me around for years, that opinion. It sort of cemented itself in my being. And, the sex addiction, the one who gets abused becomes the abuser. And so I think I didn't sexually assault anybody, but my attitude to women was quite destructive, actually, to be quite honest with you. So it played a major part in my life, and it stunted my growth. There was a lot of rage attached to it, a lot of anger, and so and it just followed me through my life until I sort of started to deal with it as I got a bit older.
So you never were able to settle down with a woman?
Never, and I still struggle in that area of my life now. I still struggle, but I'm getting better.
What was it like growing up with a notorious father? And do you want to tell the public, we've got a lot of viewers in America, you want to tell the public who your father was and about the relationship with Joey Pyle's dad and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was out of South London. There was a big mixture in my family. The difference between my mother and father was unbelievable. My mother was a very soft, beautiful lady, but my dad had this. Well, he was a criminal. That was his a serious criminal as well. It's what he'd done for a living, and so I think at a very young age, I started to identify some of the things that he was doing. I see some bad violence, with other people as a young kid. I don't think he knew really. It wasn't a sort of thing that he wanted to show me. These things that happened was, I think, mistakes, but I did see it. And so I had this father around me who took us out of South London and took us down to Surrey to sort of better our life. It didn't work with me, and yeah, so I grew up around this man who had a lot of authority, but he had the same. He was a mixture of opposite. My dad was a very strong man, powerful man. He didn't feel pain, but he felt emotional pain. He was very weak emotionally, but in his strength, he was a strong guy. He could fight. He was stand up. My dad. He was only a little guy, Irish descent. But you can have a right old fight, the old man.
Have you got any fight stories?
What with me seeing him?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. At a very young age, when I was about 6, we was coming round the one-way system at Vauxhall with my mother and my brother and sister, and someone cut him up in the car, and that's when I do things that he used to do. He used to bite his tongue in anger, and I remember him getting very angry and chasing the geezer about. And we used to live in the flats in Stockwell. And when we pulled up at Stockwell, the fella drove past again after a lot of verbal down at Vauxhall. So my mother jumped out the car with my brother and my sister. And Dad see the guy, went to retaliate. And my mum left me in the car hoping my dad wouldn't follow him. But he did. Anyway, for my good fortune, the old man never caught up with him. But there was a lot of anger, a lot of rage. There was a weapon pulled out from underneath the glove compartment in the car. And then the next time I saw it, which was a real sort of heavy-duty sort of situation, we was coming up Battersea Rise, and I was about 8 or 9. It's funny how you remember these things as well. And they play a major part in your own growth as a human being. And so I was coming up Battersea Rise with an old mate of his called Art Basati, and Art's brother Teddy. They was all boxers, and they'd obviously spotted someone they had the hump with. So they pulled round the corner up the Webbs Road, and I was sitting in the back. And years ago, my old man used to buy and sell cars. And do you know where the wheel is on the outside? There used to be a thing years ago. There was like a sort of, it was the inner casing of the wheel, and I was sitting on that. And I don't know where my dad had gone, and then a few minutes later I could hear a bit of an argument. And this geezer come running round the corner. It was Sod's Law. He fell against the car, and his face was smashed to pieces where they'd done him. And he just so happened to fall against the window where I was sitting. And I thought, oh my God, like that. And I don't remember it that well, but I remember the trauma. And I remember my dad coming round the corner, seeing him laying against the car. There's all blood everywhere. And it really upset my dad. And I remember the guy running, and my dad got me out of the car and cuddled me, saying I didn't mean it. But I've never forgot it. I've never forgot it. And I don't, you know, they play a major part in how you think, and you condone violence, I suppose, at a very young age.
Who was Joey Pyle Sr. and how did your dad hook up with him?
Well, Joe's fraternity and my dad's fraternity, they go back years. The train robbers, you know, the foremans. And I'm not name dropping, it's just who my dad used to hang about with, or he knew, the Richardsons. And then him and Joe, I remember Joe when I was about 16, when Joe was selling commercial vehicles off the Walworth Road, and his brother Ted, I believe. So I remember Joe. And then my dad and Joe sort of got together I suppose I was about 18, 19. And, you know, they're both dead, otherwise I wouldn't be telling tales. So bless the both of you. You know, they were smuggling cannabis into the UK in quite in a big way.
Is this Howard Marks era or pre-Howard?
No, they was mates with Howard. They was mates. I mean, I never met Howard till later on, but I'd met Howard a number of times. I got a cracking photo of him and my old man. But yeah, Howard was a great guy. But I think it was around that same sort of era. But
1970s, then 60s.
No, I think later than that. I would say I was born in 58, so it's about 76. That's all the time. And they had this operation. It was very sort of new in London. It wasn't sort of a crime that everyone was involved with. So I think they hit the road running. And it created a business that went on for a number of years. It was regular. I wasn't involved. I was just a young kid. I'd be on the peripherals. Allegedly, there was someone got shot. And that was the downfall of it. I don't know who it was, but there was something went on like that. And I believe it was to do. My dad and Joe went out to the States through Alex Steen, I believe. Don't know if you know Alex. He was as an old boy used to be about you. And Alex introduced out there. There was a guy called Wazzle, He was in the music game, and by all accounts, I mean, allegedly, he was very friendly with one of those 5 bosses. And Joe and the old man went out there, and they arrived, 2 sort of London hoods. And I'm not saying it was, but I do believe that it was the embryo stage of the start of the importations, I believe. And then it used to come in from Holland, and it was regular, and so it mushroomed and grew. It was international crime. It was big stuff. It was big stuff.
What were you like at school?
Well, it's really funny. My old man was very bright, and my sister's a school teacher, and my brother, God rest his soul, he was very bright. They were sort of A-level students. I was too, Bob. I just couldn't get it. And so I was a street kid from a very, very... I started thieving very early, smoking, drinking. So my concentration levels in school wasn't very good. But I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I was quite a good sportsman. So I think it got me through. I went to a school where you had to raise your cap, and, it was a school where they played rugby, cricket and rowing, and I was just a rascal. And there weren't many sort of rascals in the school, but I became sort of a bit of a leader and a co-leader, let's just say, or a member of a little team, and gravitated to the naughty boys.
And what did you aspire to be while you were in school?
Well, it was really funny because crime started at an early, not a level of crime. I used to thieve out of Woolworths and nick sort of lipsticks and for the pretty little girls in the high street. But I always had the aspirations of being a football player. And I had a great right foot, but a diabolical left foot. And I didn't get school. I wanted to. I always had a creative mind. I used to go into a sort of not a Walter Mitty's head, but I used to sort of imagine. I had a great imagination, and but the sexual abuse was starting to develop itself, and I was sort of uneasy with myself. I found it very hard to concentrate, and I was always looking for a fix at a very early age, actually, and the sort of hole inside of me grew bigger and bigger and bigger.
What was your entry-level job into the smuggling enterprise?
Excuse me. So being around that, I saw things. I saw, I mentioned earlier, there was some money owed out in Italy, and they took my parents hostage. They didn't kidnap them. They took them away, and they weren't released. My mum loved it. It was a lovely.
You want to give us the whole story of that?
Okay, I will do. So with the operation with Joe and Dad, there was some money owed. I think it had something to do with this alleged shooting. And there was some money owed. And my dad went out there with my mother to pay the money. And there was some missing, not on purpose. And the money was forthcoming, but because there'd been a bit of a mishap. And it wasn't allowed to be explained immediately. So they took my parents. My old man didn't like it, because they they locked him away. My mum loved it. It was in a hotel in Naples. She said I could see the sea, and the food was lovely. Your dad was angry, marching about like a lunatic. I went round to tell Joe, they'd phoned up my house. And we was told not to speak on the phone,
Yeah.
Anyway, there was a bit. I got a bit mouthy because my mother was there, and I went round to see Joe, and Joe dealt with it, and they got released, and they come back. But they didn't. I think they took a dislike to me because of some of the things I said down the phone. I think I got told off by Joe and on by the old man.
How old were you at that point?
I must have been about 17, 18, maybe 19.
So that must have messed with your head. Your parents had been kidnapped.
Very much so. Well, when you say kidnapped, they were kidnapped, but not to the degree where there was guns and they was wrapped up and they was locked away. It was quite a nice kidnap in a way, but it still meant isolation for 48 hours. And my dad didn't like that, marching about. Your mum said he was marching about like a lunatic, and he didn't take kindly to it. But yeah, it messed with my head, and I think progressively through my years, the dysfunction that grew in me, the antidote for it was to love money, love drugs, love women, or think I did. And so I was always looking for that extra fix, the wanting and the getting, the give me. And it became very destructive.
So were you transporting drugs?
Well, eventually I did. I got to that. I'd done my little apprenticeship on the streets of London and got arrested a couple of times.
What was that? Was doing what?
I was arrested for cocaine.
Selling cocaine?
It was in the car, they said. So, and I got arrested and was in a mad police chase.
What does that feel like?
Not getting frightening.
Were you driving?
No, the kid I was driving with, if God rest his soul, he's dead now. He could drive, this kid.
Run it down. What happened?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. He was coming over to me, and there was some cocaine around, yeah? And he was on his toes. He was wanted. He was wanted for some cannabis, a loaded gun, and he was driving up to see me in Battersea. I had a shop there. I had an Edwardian and Victorian bathroom shop. It was a front for all sorts of shenanigans. We was called Uppercast Brass. It used to be Joe and Dad's video shop. So all that went on. And he come to see me. We'd had a couple of beers. And on the way to see me, he'd had a bit of an argument in the car. And one of his tricks was he used to squirt people with ammonia in the chest. And
what does that do?
Well, if you do it in the eyes, it's dangerous. It can blind you. But he never used to do it in the eyes. But the fumes of it water your eyes. It's like a mace. And so he had done that to someone in Wandsworth. And they got half of his number plate. And then he come to me. He didn't tell me that had happened. And so as we're doing what we was messing about doing, I went to get in my car. I had this little black BMW. And as I've got in the car, I've seen the police car pull up, but not pull up, but looked. So I thought, well, I've had a few drinks. I'd get in his car. And he'd hid all the cocaine that he had in his steering wheel. It was an old Fiesta. And there was an ounce on the side. And I think there was 7 or 8 ounces in his, where it was. And I get in the back of the car with him. So we're driving down the road. And as we're driving down the road, it's a bit like New York, this thing. It's well, not like New York, but in Battersea, Northcote Road, there's all roads that run parallel, and there's about 9 of them. So you go down one side, across Northcote Road, up the other side. So as we've gone down and hit Northcote Road, I've looked to the right and I've seen the police car. So I said, hold up, or whatever I said. Wallop, they're everywhere. So he proceeds, good driver. I mean, he was bloody good. He proceeds to have a getaway. And it's funny now, it weren't there.
What's going through your head at that moment?
Do you know, it's really funny. When the adrenaline kicks in, you forget the fear and it takes over. And I suppose I had balls as well. But to say I wasn't frightened, the first few minutes, I ponied myself. But once you get into it, your liberty's on the line. So he's up curbs, he's driving around things. And now we've got 3 or 4. There's a helicopter gone up for him, because they know he's a dangerous boy, this kid. And we wind up going round by the mental home in Tooting. And as we went through this geezer's garden to get away, he was only a young kid, and he was underneath sanding. He had a small little boat, a little rowing boat, and he was laying on this bench. I'll never forget. He was sanding the boat, and all of a sudden we've gone through his fence. He's rolled off. We've gone through. The police stopped for a minute, which give us about another 30 seconds or a minute. He's given me the ounce of coke. I've slung it out the window. I put my socks on so it didn't have my fingerprints. I've slung it out the window. It's caught a fence and fell. We've reversed to go through this big wooden fence to go into the mental home and get out and run. It's about 18 foot, this fence was. And every 6 feet was them corrugated posts. We didn't know that. So he reversed and he hit it right. I mean, it was the worst. His accuracy was diabolical. He hit it right in the middle, doing about 40 or 50 mile an hour. So the car went up in the air. Oh. He went through the window screen. His bone in his nose popped out of him. I busted my knee and my ankle. We're in trouble. The car's flat and the police are there. And so I get out of the motor and they put these inflatable things on my leg to stop the pain. I had internal bleeding. But the mother of the kid who was sanding his boat down, it's quite a posh lady, come out of a stick and started belting me. You bastard, she excuse my French. We get nicked, and that was it really. We wound up in the prison, and yeah, they didn't find the evidence straight away because the car had sort of constantined, and it wasn't till later. But I'd got a bit of bail at Judge in Chambers, and I absconded to Spain.
So, what made you decide to abscond?
Well, I suppose I was only a young kid, yeah. It was the flavour of the month, Marbella. Everyone was down in Marbella. And I suppose I was looking, maybe if I... The truth of the matter was, the gear wasn't mine. It shouldn't have been my shout. But I'm there. I've got a little bit of previous convictions. I didn't want to get 6 or 7 years. I thought I'd let him go of court. So I went out to Spain and sort of messed about. I don't want to go into that too much, but messed about a little bit out there.
When you're deciding to abscond, what plans do you have to make? How are you going to survive? How much money do you need? Where are you going to get the money from? How are you going to keep going?
Okay, great questions. So I decided to go with a few quid that I had, plus help from my dad and Joe. And so you had the year passports then. So I had a bent yearly passport. I thought I was like Ronnie Biggs. I weren't. So out I'd go, very emotional. I had that sort of mixed emotion in me. I was quite a strong kid, but I was quite tearful. I was quite a tearful kid. So I went out to Marbella, and one thing led to another, and I sort of earned a few quid, which stabilised my stay there.
Did you have people that you connected with in Marbella who received you?
Absolutely. There was a number of people out there. Freddie Foreman was there. A number of people who was old Jackie Kramer was a beautiful, beautiful Jack. Friends of my dad's. But, you know, you're an independent kid. I'm 25 years of age, and of course I was looked after out there. And so it's very hard to be in a place like Marbella and not think you're on holiday. So first of all, it took me time to settle. Then I got myself involved with a couple of things and got a few quid, and started to live a life. My young daughter was only 18 months old, so my wife used to come out every now and again to visit me. But I was living the life down there. It was 1985, but then something really tragic happened. My young brother. Do you mind if I speak about that, my young brother?
No, please tell us all about him, yes.
Yeah, beautiful boy, an angelic kid, nothing like me. He was like his mother, like my mother, and he wonderful sense of humour. He was into his astrology a bit, very bright, but he liked to puff, he liked to bet, very bright kid, but he was a very sweet kid. He when you're around people and they've got that sort of, their being is in the present is funny, kind. He wasn't loud like me. He always had a nice thing to say. He didn't want attention. He was a little bit like a wallflower, but had an incredible way about him. And he come out there to be with me because my grandfather was dying. And then one night we went out into the Port of Banús, and we was with Charlie Wilson, the train robber. All that little mob was about. And a lovely, I won't say who it was, another lovely friend of mine who passed away. He was up to no good. And it was some funny little moves down there, some great moves there was. And he had a bank manager, this fella, in the UK, and I think about 10 cards with a daily thing of 250 quid. So he used to say, "Come with me, son," and we'd go at 1 minute to 12, draw the 2.5, 1 minute past 12, draw the other 2.5. So that was our daily money. It was quite funny, actually. And but I was out of him one night, and we was having a bit of coke, me and my brother and him. And my dad was having an affair. That was one of my dad's traits, and he was having an affair with a lady, bless him. And we started arguing about it, me and my brother, about 2:00 in the morning. And but we was virtually saying the same things. We was just upset. Dad was having an affair. We was high on coke, and we had words. It wasn't violent. It was loud. And he got really upset, my brother, and he walked out of the house, and he got down to the ball ring in near Port of Banús. I don't know if you know that. So I went to look for him, and I was in the car, and I found him walking around. I said, whatever, I said, get in the motor. He got back in the motor, went back to the apartment, and in about half an hour later, we stopped speaking. I went to bed, and now it's about 4 a.m. I hear the car go, screech, and off he goes. Anyway, I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning, whatever time it was, I went to go to the lavatory. And I suppose the size of that glass there was a shaving mirror where two people could shave. And on the glass, in Vaseline, and I've still got it today, was "I love you." And I thought, what's all that about? And then all of a sudden I recall what's gone on. So I start to look for him. Phone up England, go round to a few friends of mine's house. He'd gone to my mate's house because his passport was there. No one could find him. So I looked for him. Anyway, he died. He got run over.
Holy shit!
It was heavy stuff.
He got run over like in a pedestrian capacity.
He never got run over. Sorry. Take that back. He had a car accident.
Car accident.
Yeah. And he went up. What he'd done, a lorry went over the top of him.
Oh my God!
So it was heavy stuff, and he was in a terrible way. And his girlfriend was pregnant with his son, so he never met his son, obviously. And eventually, I find out that my brother's dead in the UK. Absolutely slaughtered me.
So you're in shock.
Total shock.
How do you pick yourself up out of that?
I don't know. It was really strange. I think it played badly with my mental health. And he died, and then the following day, my grandfather died. So my mother buried her son and her dad on the same day. It was pretty, and I'm wanted. So,
are you self-medicating with drugs?
Absolutely, full. I'm bang at it. And my dad arrives with Arthur Sutty and my wife at Malaga Airport. Dad's abusing all the police and all the customs and screaming and shouting like a lunatic. Blamed me, didn't know what he was saying. He thought it was me who died, then he found out it was my brother. And my brother was the angel. He was the baby of the family. And so we go to the morgue, and I know that my brother is. They say he was squashed. We couldn't even see what he looked like, and they pulled it. They pulled the coffin out, and all they showed us, they had a sheet over him. But I looked down the sheet and I could see that he didn't exist, and all we could see was this part of his face, just this right hand side. And foolishly, I pulled the sheet back a little bit, and it wasn't nice. My dad tried to get him out of the coffin drunk. The security came. He wanted to carry his boy. He wanted to cuddle his boy for the last time, and they weren't having it. And that night, all the faces came to see Brian Foreman, Charlie Smith, Jackie Kramer. They all came down to visit the old man. He was gone, my dad. It slaughtered all of us. It was the breakup of my family, really. Breakup of my family. He was a beautiful boy. Beautiful boy.
So you just ploughed into self-medication then to try and numb the pain?
Absolutely.
What drugs were you on?
I was quite choosy. I used to have a fetish for cocaine, cannabis, and I used to like drinking champagne and brandy. So that was my hit. And but after that, I got very heavily involved with cocaine abuse, big time.
How long was the haze?
Do you know what? It went on and on and on and on, and in the end, I was in self-pity mode, and I used my brother as an excuse to feel pain constantly. That was the excuse in the end. But I was devastated, absolutely devastated. I blamed myself. I used to get on them ecstasy tablets and go up to his cemetery, and I'd fall asleep up there crying. I used to scream at God, "What have you done?" And it was tragic. But he was only 21, and he broke my heart. And his son was born sort of 6 months after, and he was a beautiful boy, his son Charles. And so it just went on, and then I started having affairs. I disconnected, and there's no excuse. I have to take responsibility for my own behaviour. But I started having affairs with people close to me. It wasn't nice. It wasn't nice at all.
Were you getting more heavily involved in criminal activity as well?
In a way, no. In a way, yes. I wasn't capable of trusting myself. Not that I'd ever say anything wrong in a police station, but my ability to be on point. I just went into a bag of coke for about 2 or 3 years, and I had an affair with my wife's friend, and I think I had a bit of a breakdown, but I never went and got any help. I self-medicated and wound up on the Valium and pints of beer.
What were the symptoms of the breakdown?
The symptoms of the breakdown was I thought I was losing my mind. I couldn't sit still. I started talking to myself a little bit. I was gone. It was like as if there was something had sort of taken me over. And I'm very honest about it. You know, it made me very weak, very vulnerable. I got very angry. I couldn't put two words together. But I fought it. I fought it, so I believe in a gallant way, because I didn't give in to it. And it frightened my parents. They'd lost one child, my grandfather. And do you know, back in the day, in the 80s, it ain't like it is today, where you can go and speak to someone. It's advertised everywhere, Samaritans or NA groups or church or self-help groups. It's out there. You've only got to go on the internet. Well, then it was sort of a weakness if you had a breakdown. You can't have a breakdown. You're a whatever you are. And so it made me hide it. I hid it out on the outside world, but to the inner circle, they realised there was something wrong with me.
When there's a tragedy like that, it can break families apart. How was the relationship with your parents while you were in that haze?
Well, my dad was having an affair, and I don't mean to discredit my father here, but 6 months after or 9 months or a year after 6 months after my brother died, the girl he was with, she had a child. So it completely smashed us. And I think a lot of people sort of, and I don't want to decry my dad because he's a lovely old boy, but people lost respect for him because he left my mum. He didn't know he was gone. The old man was gone. And so my mother sort of grabbed hold of my brother's newborn baby and the mother of that of Charles, and she took them home to the house, and she sort of self-medicated on. My mum's threshold was always love, the love, an action. It was always an action of love. So she sort of just stayed on her own, broken-hearted. My sister run off to her life, and I was out of my nut, and my dad went to live in Ibiza. So it was just completely the closeness of the family was broken, and I think that was a biggie as well.
So you progress to work with a crime syndicate. How does that come about?
So I'm very careful what I say, and I don't want to sort of mention people's names at all.
Yeah, let's not do that.
And all I can do is talk about what I got arrested for. But there was lots of stuff that went on. So what happened is, after this sort of affair, the breakdown, I had to get away. And so my father had a number of connections out in Morocco. And he said, do you fancy going out there? Which I did. And I went to live in Spain again. With not a lot of money, enough to sort of get this enterprise going, and they was Italians, Bosnians, a few Americans in there. There was the transportation, I believe. This will come out in the newspaper allegedly, for a big cocaine operation coming out of South America. That wasn't us. But we used the same transport. We didn't know that, and we started to sort of play around in Morocco and into the UK, and then we bought a huge amount home on a boat, on a fishing boat. Well, we never bought it home. We was the entry, and that got aborted in the Bristol Channel in '92. A huge amount. And then the following November, they was following us quite intense. After Joe and the old man had been nicked at the late 80s, it was on the both of them. And I think they fitted Joe up. And Joe got 14 years for something completely different. And they wanted the old man and all. And so we went to work with smuggling cannabis. And in '93, November '93, in a place called Bideford in North Devon. There was armed officers there, There was 17 of us, so there was about 60 officers there. I think there was about 10 armed, 12 armed, all night sights, and it was like a bit of a scene from a film. And we got nicked, and that was in 1993.
Just slowing this down a bit then. What was it like arriving in Morocco? What's that like?
Yeah, I used to love it there. Morocco was fantastic in Tangiers. And a friend of a friend, I can't say names, but there was a lady who lived out there, and she was a sort of a little bit, come from a wealthy background, quite posh. And up in the Rift Valley, there was a lot of sort of ex-Brits living out there, expats living out there, but older than me, and they were quite well-to-do, like retired artists. There was a governess there, there was this there was all sorts of people going on there. So my friend introduced me to them. There was a couple of gay guys there who I used to play backgammon with, so I sort of mingled in with the straight crowd. But I loved it. I mean, the Casbah, I was around it. It was all corruption. It was right up my street, and I got right involved out there, and had some fun. And I fell in love with the place. And the attic popped up, and I started to enjoy the nightlife there. I should have been working, but I sort of gravitated to the cocaine and the women a little bit. Sorry if that offends you, Trace.
Was the drug scene different there?
Very much so. It was more cloak and dagger. The cannabis was like it's their product. You know, it's not. It doesn't seem like an illegal substance to them, and so it's everywhere. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't sort of a cocaine scene. You had to be careful there. It was more of a sort of a drinky cannabis scene. But across the road in Marbella, you could get what you want and do what you like there. You know?
Was there an element of danger in Morocco?
I lived on that. That was a buzz for me. That was a buzz for me. I was a mixture of an opposite. I could be very fearful, and yet I could be fearless. And a situation happened to me which was quite unusual. When I went into this place with one of these guys, there was a few heavy Moroccans there.
What place is this?
This is Morocco. And we're going on a meeting to see the quality of the stuff that we got arrested for. So I want to try it. And they said, well, they wasn't happy about that. It was like as if I was discrediting them or not believing them. But I'm an addict, I want to puff. So, and this is Michael to a T. So we're in this beautiful building. It was like a 50 pence piece shaped building, like a big turret. It was lovely. It was all sort of open windows and pretty girls and children and all sorts of things going on. And I'm up in this room with these two guys. One of them's armed.
What do the guys look like?
Just tough-looking geezers, but I never used to take the notice of that. That never used to bother me. I think it was more of a show. But they think that we're coming from an organised criminal syndicate in London, and you know they think things about you, and you use that to your advantage. So I'm the son of one of them, and I'm having a puff, but I've got really stoned, and I shouldn't have done. And I've put my feet up on the side, and they're all looking at me. But I've gone. I'm meant to be having a good conversation. I'm not coherent. I've gone. So I'm getting banged in the ribs. A little mouse comes from behind the curtain, and it frightened me. And I've jumped up and went, "My God, there's a mouse!" The geezer with the gun went, "Yeah, you know, what's the big deal?" And that was my vulnerability. Now, 3 months later, I'm nicked with a gun being pointed at me. And not because I'm not frightened of guns, but I had no fear when I got arrested. And I thought about it the other day. I thought, you was frightened of a mouse. That sort of, and yet you're not frightened of this crazy arrest. It was a big arrest. It was a naughty arrest. And I wondered what that was in me. And it was always that yin and yang, that opposite in me, that abused child, that frightened, where, you know, why am I being abused? Crying out, someone help me, in my head. So I could function in that, but I could also function in a very brave, sort of gallant man. But it confused me.
Before you got arrested, did you have any inkling? Was anything out of the ordinary starting to happen?
What, in the atmosphere, do you mean?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can you describe what was happening?
Well, what was happening was we found out that it was on us, yeah? I'm not going to say how, but you can imagine how we found out. And the first enterprise, the first deal that went over in the Bristol Channel, they'd watched us.
This was an aborted mission, was it?
That was the aborted mission, yeah.
So they knew they were being watched, so they decided to abandon the project.
Well, that wasn't our shout at that particular time. These people had come from a place called Cape Verde, and it had nothing to do with us that bit. Yeah, they travelled and whatever they'd done, changed ships, so they say. But it was on them because of the cocaine runs that the other people were doing. It was massive. I mean, when it came out in the papers, it was massive. It was huge. Now, we was only a link in the chain, but it was organised international crimes. The Americans was on it. But allegedly they'd opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands and drew this South American cartel to put their money in there. I don't know how they managed to do that. But when they got nicked, there was tons of cocaine, nothing to do with us, a Moyet painting, copious amounts of money, and we're using the same bit of transport, not that we knew, to bring the cannabis home. Now, we wasn't in charge of that bit. We was in charge of the entry with a fisherman down in Bideford. So when they aborted out in the Bristol Channel, I think something went on. I'm not sure. There was another boat spotted, apparently. With Boris the bastard, the Boris kid. He was a lunatic, this geezer. We stayed in an hotel that night, and we was in these two beds, and he had a chest on him. It was like a big barreled chest. And when he took his shirt off, he had a crucifix on him. It was that big, yeah. And I've looked at it, and I didn't have faith then, but my nan was a Catholic, so I knew about Jesus and all what went on, and I respected the church. Anyway, he took this crucifix off. It must have weighed, I don't know, it was a right heavy thing. I think I had to give him a hand getting it off. Put it on the table, and he looked at it, he put his hand on top of it, and he said, Michael, this is a gift from God, this cannabis. So I said, okay. And this is a gift. Anyway, we lose it. The following day, he ain't too happy.
How did you lose it?
Well, we don't know. It gets aborted.
Oh, this is the aborted load.
This is the aborted lot. So, very foolishly, my old man says, get out of there. But we want to go and find out what's going on. Yeah. So, we've got a car that's not registered to no one, and we drive to Swansea, where the boys have come in who've aborted the load, and there was a Frenchman and these three Africans. It's like someone died on this boat, but Boris is just as brazen. He walks in, I don't. I put a balaclava on me, a scarf, and I jump over the fence. Not that it done me any good, and it was being by the customs. So we go on this boat. There's an outrageous argument. No one gets hurt, but there's an outrageous. And Boris is going, we go diving. It's November or January. We dive. It's ruined. You know, he wants to dive for it. It's 20
the drugs were thrown overboard.
The drugs were thrown overboard.
Gotcha.
They say it was 10 ton. Yeah. So that was that. Now we're being watched. We all leave. As I'm driving down the road, I get pulled over by a patrol car that the customs wanted to know who was in the car. So they didn't know I was in the car. So they give me a pull for speeding. They're just finding out who I am. I was going to give a wrong name, but I thought, no, I don't want to cause any trouble. We've done nothing wrong up until now. Anyway, Boris goes off and I go off. They let us go. But the operation had now... It had taken place, and they was on it, and they wanted us. So we found out via someone who knew somebody. They said, look, it's on you. So I was living in Spain at the time anyway, so we go back to Spain, and we down tools for a number of months. But, you know, greed plays a funny part in your life. You're used to the huge amount of money that you're trying to earn, and it's the buzz as well. You're addicted to it. So we went back to work, and in November the 7th in the early 90s, we brought 4.5 ton in. I know it was 5 ton.
So you said the load that was dumped was 10 ton, was it?
They say it was 10 ton.
They said it was 10. They like the headlines.
Yeah.
But then you came along with 4.5 ton.
Of our own.
Of your own.
Well, of a consortium.
Okay, so when the 10 ton was dumped, usually someone's going to be held responsible when there's that amount of loss in an operation like this.
Yeah.
Are you able to say what kind of would the aftermath would be of that to the people that they would be held responsible?
Well, what it was, because the 10 ton allegedly came out of a bigger lump, right?
And did you say this was coke or weed?
No, this is cannabis.
This is cannabis. Hash.
So allegedly there was loads of it. Yeah, 10 tons enough, but they say there was more. Now, whatever they do, what I've been told is how they operate. So there's different responsibilities at different given times. So our responsibility only came into play if we'd have picked it up. And we wasn't the owners of that. We was doing someone a service by making an entry into the UK. So it had nothing to do with us other than we was going to bring it into the UK. Our boat was a fishing vessel. He was a tough kid, this fisherman. And he hid up in Lundy Island. Bad weathers. Anyway, it gets aborted. So basically, we was safe. Whatever happened after that, only God knows. I never found out, and I never ventured to find out.
So you said there was a Frenchman and 3 other guys.
Yeah, 3 Africans.
So they would have been in trouble, would they?
Well, I suppose if it gets aborted, it gets aborted, yeah.
Or is that like from the top, they just say abort it?
I would imagine so. I imagine that they realised that they was in trouble, yeah. And there'd obviously been some activity that they'd seen. And 10 ton is, so they say, it's a lot to get rid of. I mean, it's quite a lot. But they managed to do it. And when they done that, they then got one of the HMS sort of boats, Royal or whatever they are there, I don't know what they're called. They went out and towed them in.
If you get caught with that, what kind of sentence are you looking at?
Well,
10 ton?
Maximum's only 14 years, but it's the fine you've got to be careful of. It's the fine that you can sort of double your figures up, you know, if it's a huge amount. And you have to pay it or do the bird or do the prison sentence.
And that adds time on.
Absolutely, it's the fine, and they work it out. If you just arrive with 10 ton, they don't think it's the first time you've done it.
So you've got money in the bank somewhere.
Something's hidden somewhere. But the operation that was going on behind this was massive. It was international. They was Bosnians, Italians. There were some people from the States. It was heavy going. We wasn't part of that consortium. We was an add-on for the entry into the UK. So then they came back and asked, do we want to get involved again? And I said yes. Yeah. And so we attempted to similar deal. I'd like to explain it to you, but I can't. Very exciting it was, but I can't put that out on here. So we got involved. We put our operation in place. Our little fishermen went out again, and we secured it. Yeah, unbeknown to us that they was being watched the whole time. And there's a tidal at Bideford. There's a tide that goes out and comes into the harbour. So we was due home on the midnight tide on November the 7th. So we're hanging about down in Bideford, me and my associates, and we go into the town just to get some food and just have a little look around, see what we, you get that sort of 6 cents and you have a look about. And see one or two things I didn't like. So my back went up a little bit. And all of a sudden, out of the pub comes the fisherman who's meant to be out at sea. His surname was Fishley. I'm sorry, Dick. He was a strong character, this guy. Proper. You wouldn't like to get a right hand off this fisherman. And he falls out of the pub. I said, well, what are you doing? He went, your shit's over there. And where the water had gone out, it'd come in on the morning tide without telling anybody. Yeah. So when the tide had gone out, the boat's on its capsize, waiting for the water to come back in. to raise the boat up. So the boat's there, we got it. It's home and dry. There's 4.5 ton. I thought, that'd do. And the security around these people, the secure measures that they took to secure this with Donald Duck voicemails and different run reviews, numbers, there was all that going on. It proved worthless. It proved worthless. So the gear's there. But the arrangement to take it off is when the tide comes up, we have to wait 12 hours. Now, I'd done my job. And I shouldn't really be there. My dad told me not to be there, but it was greed.
Yeah.
It was greed, yeah.
What was the street value and what was your piece?
The street value was, I suppose, it's about 10 mil.
In that time period of money or now?
Yeah, I can't tell you my piece. It was enough, though.
So it was worth 10 million back then?
Yeah.
So if you forward decades, then how much is it worth today? Like 20, 30 mil?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. But it was a saving grace, yeah. And this is when I know that there's something else that goes on. There's a power higher than us. They came to me and offered me to put on there a large amount of cocaine, and they said, listen, we can hide it on there and we'll give you half of it and you sell the other half for us. And I agreed it. I weren't going to tell anybody. Yeah, I would have told them afterwards. It wasn't there so I could sort of have it for myself. I'd have shared out, but I didn't want to tell anyone. I thought they might frighten them and things like that. But now you're talking about 14 years up to 30 years. Makes a big difference. And when I said, I'll do it. And there's a story that goes with it, and I won't go into it, but something told me...
Can you go into it?
Well, no, it was a moment that's nothing a criminal story. I was on the beach in Spain, and they say to me, do you want to put that on as well? And I go, you got that, yeah. And it comes to huge amounts of money, yeah. They said, we can hide it, we put it with a puff, yeah. I said, you got that. As I leave, I was married to an Italian girl out there. Her father had restaurants out there, a young lady called Daniela. And she was very sort of spiritual, this kid. And she had a sixth sense, you know. So as I'm driving up the hill to go home after agreeing to do it, I've seen her in the motor crying. So she drove off. So I thought, what's the matter? So I spin round in the car, see someone I know there who I didn't totally fancy, actually. I'm not saying he was a wronger, but I didn't fancy him. There was something about him I didn't sort of gel with. And I don't know if it was them two factors, but I thought, you can't put the cocaine on. You can't do it. So I go down to the beach, lucky to find them there. I say, don't put the coke on. Come on, don't make no difference. And it wasn't because I was frightened, because you're in it to win it. And this would have doubled the money. So I said, no, don't put it on. Thank God I made that decision. Thank God I made that decision, because I'd have got 30 years. But I do believe that there's... that our lives are planned out in a faith-based way. And I think that was a positive for me. I don't know what made me do it, but something inside me, and I'm a greedy kid, I like money, and I wasn't frightened. So I often wonder, why did I say no? But thank God I did. Anyway, that was that part. So we then leave, we go into Amsterdam, we come home, and that's when then I go down to Bideford. Shouldn't have gone. The old man said, don't go, but I did. And that's when I got nicked.
Did you know how much shit you were in when you got nicked?
That yin and yang in me, that opposite in me, my adrenaline took over. I knew I was in trouble. I got a gun pointed at my head. But it was really funny. I've got quite a powerful voice. It's my gift. And I can use it to bless. I can also use it to curse. It's got me in a lot of trouble, my mouth. And all of a sudden, I've come over the bridge in Bideford. They're all nicked. I don't know they're nicked. I shouldn't be there. But very foolishly, 48 hours prior to that, we'd had a bit of a late night, so I was a little bit jarred. I never used to use drugs or get drunk when I was working, but there was a little bit of a drink and that. And I stayed at my pal's house, and I got my driver with me, bless him, God rest his soul, ex-bank robber, lovely boy. And my mate, my partner, he's from Devon. Well, he's not from Devon, he's from Surrey, but he's like a bullock, this kid. He's a right strong kid, he's a game kid. So we was in it, we was a good firm. We was in, and there weren't no gangsters or faces and all that, only my dad. And they're mostly like fishermen, Peter, our ex-driver, the driver who died, is an ex-bank robber. So as we've come over Bideford Bridge, the gear's going to be moved, and we're just going to give our eyes a treat. We're going to watch it. As we've come over the bridge, boom! All these halogen lights come on, and they start shouting out my name. Michael Emmett, get out of the car. I thought, oh my God, the game's up. So I duck in the car, there's a night sight, and I tell the geezer to drive. I say, Al, drive. He said, they're going to kill us. And he takes off in third gear. So the car goes, they're everywhere. And up the side of Bideford on the quay, there's a wall, there's some steps, a staircase. They're all over the wall like that. And it seemed surreal. But one thing it was, I wasn't at all frightened or perturbed. And I got out of the motor, and for a minute, they started pistol whipping my co-defendant and dragged Trot Allen out of the car. And they're screaming at me. And for some unknown reason, they had a belief about me that wasn't true. They thought I was a right tough head. I was a broken soul. They didn't realise. They thought I was something I weren't. And I had someone's number in my pocket. No one who was naughty, but I didn't want them to get this number. So as they're screaming and shouting, I remember the number, and I've got to put my hand in the pocket so I can eat it. And they shout out, he's got a concealed weapon. Now, it could be dangerous. So I've gone to everyone, I don't know what. I said, shut up, all of you. It was cold. It was noisy. I went, shut up. I wanted the world to stop for a minute so I could gather myself. And it was quite bizarre, but for about 10 seconds, everyone shut up. Everyone stopped. And I went, what? I put it in my mouth. Anyway, then they got me. They smashed me to the floor, whacked me with his stick, got a gun, and I'm on the floor. And I'm his trophy now. And for some reason, they're focused on this villain's son, that they've got this image that I might shoot someone. I wouldn't shoot anyone. And I'm not saying I haven't been, whatever I've been around and seen, but that's not really what I was like. I used to like money and women. And I was, self-praise is no praise, but I was quite a good criminal. I was quite game, but also stupid, to be honest with you. Anyway, I'm nicked, gun pointed at my head, and he's gone to me, we got ya. And I was looking at him, and I told him to F off. And he went to me, a penny for your faults. And I'll never forget. I was looking up in the sky. It was November the 7th. It was a blustery old night. Clouds were moving about like they was being blown. And I felt a bit uncomfortable. And he said, a penny for your faults. And I said, my 3 children. He said, what? And I had a tear in my eye. He said, you all right? I said, leave me alone. I was thinking about me kids. The next thing I know, I'm carted off to this police station. Heavy sort of, when they moved us, there was armed coppers. It was heavy going, and I just thought it was a little bit over the top. But it was from the connections abroad, plus the old boy, my dad, and we was meant to be on the book. But I don't know how, but we all wound up in Exeter prison with the fisherman and my co-defendant, and there was 4 of us that they said was principal organisers, the Frenchman, me, my dad, and my co-defendant Peter, and we should have been on the book going to Bristol, but something happened that we never went. We stayed in Exeter, and the reality of the arrest never hit me, because a lot of ego, a lot of pride. Everyone's going like, who's this? And he was a little bit infamous, my dad, and we was there, and I suppose the notoriety of, who's that and all that, and Exeter's quite a funny, not to be disrespectful, but it's down in Devon, and there's sort of, I don't mean to be rude to the kids, but there's a lot of sort of, I shouldn't say it because it's being rude, but there was a lot of big boys with big heads, and it was all like macho, and we're Londoners, we're outnumbered, but because of the thing you nick with, it gives you a get out of jail card free, that everyone leaves you alone. You know the score, and so you live on that bit for a little while, and then reality sets in.
So you said you didn't show fear when the guns were pointed on you, at least externally. Internally, was there some kind of, like, when the SWAT team smashed my door down and I saw the guns, I'm thinking, oh, fuck, my life's over in seconds if one of these fuckers pulls the trigger right now. Look at their faces. They look like they just want to shoot me. I'm like, fucking hell. Didn't you have any... What was going through your head?
I mean, I don't want to sound like a big tough guy.
Yeah.
But the mouse frightened the life out of me. But I don't know, for some unknown reason, it never, I was really on point. Fear came afterwards when I thought, God, dear, oh Lord. And he come down to me, the arresting officer, and he said, look, and they let 4 people go. And one of them was my driver, because he was nothing to do, he was just driving me. And he said to me, look, Alan won't leave the police station. He thinks your dad's going to kill him. I said, okay, he's watching the TV too much. My dad ain't going to kill anyone. He went, no, he won't leave. He thinks your dad's going to kill him. So after going and get him out of the cell, I say, Al, you got to leave. He want everyone to think I'm a grass. Alan Trotter was not an informer. I'll put that right out there. Alan Trotter was not an informer. They let him and 3 others go. And as I'm in the cell getting rid of Al, you know, how can you tell? I say, Al, you got to leave. He don't want to leave. I said, you can't leave. They're letting you go, mate. Get out of it. What would you do? I said, I'd leave. And then he said to me, the customs officer, Mr. Boyd, he said, Michael, you've got to give me your name and address. You've been here for 36 hours or 24 hours and I need to charge you. I said, I ain't telling you. You know my name. You know where I live. He said, Michael, please. He said, look, can I have a chat? I said, go on. He said, look, whatever was said was said. He said, but you and your old man. He said, but at least just give us his name and address. We want to charge you. So I said, okay. And I said, I'm not, no. I'm making your life easy, mate. He said, I'll tell you what to do. He said, what's made me sort of warm to you, or words to that effect? He said, for all this tough stuff that's going on, when the arresting officer said, a penny for your faults, he said, you had a tear in your eye. And I know you weren't crying because you was nicked. It was for your kids, wasn't it? I said, yeah, it was. He said, I'll tell you what to do. If you give me your name and address, I'll let you talk to your children. I said, you've got my name and address. So I got a phone call to the family, my children and my wife.
How'd that feel?
Yeah. But it was, do you know what? I wanted to cry. Yeah. I was like a big baby when it comes to them. I love my children. And so I'm nicked, and that was it. And then we wound up at Exeter.
What was said on the call?
I love you. I'm sorry. When they phoned up, they left it for a day because they was in the house spinning it for 7 hours. I said, you ain't going to find anything there. So
the people on the other end of the phone, then your family. When I spoke to my mum the first call, I could hear the heartbreak in her voice. Yeah. That really got to me. What kind of tone did they have with you?
First of all, it was excitement because I was on the phone, and then the reality set in, and my wife started to sort of not scream, but she got very emotional. A friend of mine was there. I managed to talk to him, and I was managed to talk to my eldest daughter. That's when I went, Daddy, where are you? Daddy, where are you? And I melted. And I give the customs officer his due. I got very tearful. He walks out of the room. And I just said, I love you. And I'll be honest with you, I wanted to get off the phone. I found it difficult to talk to my mum, to be honest with you.
Well, your dad told you to leave town. You didn't leave town. Did you think, oh, shit, I'm going to bollocking off my dad?
Absolutely. They nicked him in an hotel in Brighton. He was right out of the way, the old man. And I was gutted.
Part of the same conspiracy?
Yeah, they nicked him. They'd been on us for 18 months. So they nicked the old man, they nicked the old boy. And he was in his 60s then, bless him.
When did you have that chat with him?
About a day before I went down. I just said, look, you keep out of the way. And his involvement was introductions and things like that. He'd sort of hung his gloves up a little bit, but he liked the money. And he was a good man to have on your side. He had quite a bit of respect, the old boy. And, so he was a good man to have on your side. Nutty Irishman, love him dearly. But when he come in, when I see he was nicked, I was devastated. I was in a prison cell for 2 years with him. He drove me nuts.
He was in the prison cell for 2 years with you?
2 years with me.
What?
2 years with the old man. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Holy shit. Well, all right, before we get to that then, let's just do this chronologically. So you're in some bumpkin jail in the far southwest coast of the UK.
Yep.
You're riding on your kudos of the headline news.
Yeah.
Do they strip search you? Do you get assigned to a cell? Have you got cellmates? Are you in a dorm? What's your living situation?
So if Victorian, draconian place, sort of dark, all sort of that. But the prison officers were sort of near retirement. The inmates were sort of. This is not. It sounds terrible, but there wasn't sort of big criminals in there. It was more. It was a few murderers and a few people, but on the whole, it was a local jail that they sort of come in on remand and went out. And there was about 2 or 3 London firms down there who were nicked for cannabis. And so you walk in there, it's that suicide blue colour. They put me and the old man in a cell with a radio. There's all bogies on the wall. It was horrible. And a lot of addiction there, a lot of heroin addiction there. And I turned the radio on. And that Chris Rea song came on as I pressed the radio. This is the road to hell. Then he started, the old man. I fucking told you, what are you doing? I told you not to. And it went on for about...
In front of people or in private?
No, in private. But, I've had a few altercations with my dad where there's been sort of few sort of naughty situations growing up with him. Not that he was ever a bully, but... We had a few run-ins where he broke my nose, he nutted me on the nose, bless him. I forgave him immediately.
So when he's dressing you down like that, are you just taking it, showing respect to him, or do you feel like rebelling and saying something back?
Good question. So that changed over the years, because I drove him mad growing up. I used to smash his cars up. He used to lock his bedroom so I wouldn't get in there. My mum used to leave the window open. I'd get in and take whatever I wanted. I used to love his clothes. His trousers never fitted me, jackets did. I'd nick his car. He used to find me in clubs. He'd come with Joe and find me. I was on the coke and smoking the freebase, and I was a toy boy. So we had all that from a child at school. I used to drive him mad at the school. I never used to wear me cap, and I'd get arrested as a kid, and so it progressed, and it was fearful. But now the roles had reversed. He was 64, I think, and I was 34.
So he's considered like an old timer in prison then.
Yeah, and so I see his demeanour change. Whether it was an act or whether it was real, he acted like an old man. So I'd say, "Don't worry, I've got this." So when he snapped, I weren't having it. I made him right. It's my stupidity. I made him right, but there's no free lunches. He'd got away with it for so long. Excuse me, trials at the Old Bailey for other stuff. So he had, he had an unofficial record, my old man. So when he got his lump of bird at the tender age of 64, it was the price he paid.
How much bird did he get?
He got 12 and a half years, and we had a £3 million fine.
How many years did you get?
I got the same. Or do 6 years with the fine. But on the point of law at the appeal courts, we got out of the fine, and it only wound up 400,000.
What point of law was that?
Well, what it was, we got advised wrong, but they said that we had paid for the transport to get the gear from where it came from to London, and it was argued in court that the evidence, although we pleaded guilty in the end because they dropped the first charges, I'll tell you what it was. This is what it was, but I don't want to go into it too deep. If there's an informant, it's changed now. If there's an informant, they have to reveal the informant in the court case, because every bit of evidence, the undisclosed evidence, has to be seen, right? They changed the law the month before we went into trial, and a mate of mine, over my informant, who we never found who it was, he was abroad, he was arrested for 400 kilos, and because of my grass, they wouldn't bring him into the court, so Judge Barrington Black out in East London released my friend from the court. So we was running that story, right? So when we was running that story, they changed it. It was a white paper. This is true. They changed it about a month before we went in court. So instead of the prosecution and the prosecution and the defence discussing it, And if they say, listen, that's the grass, he's got to be named, you had a chance of walking. But they changed the point of law. This is all fact. So it made it harder. I think it come to the stage where you had to name him. There's too many people involved. So that's where we got out. So they offered us a deal, come away from the £3 million. I hope that doesn't sound confusing. And they said, here's 400,000 and give us 12 and a half years. We never got out of it at the appeal courts. We got a few years off at the appeal courts on a point of law of the summing up of my father.
So how long were you on remand?
2 stretch. 2 years.
2 years on remand.
2 years.
Similar to me then.
Yeah.
It's stressful, isn't it, remand? Because you never know quite what's going to happen to you. Like getting sentenced to 9.5 years is one of the happiest days of my life. Because the fucking all that anxiety, not knowing what was going to happen, was gone.
It's a relief, isn't it?
Yeah. Did you find that?
Yeah, no. It was all right. It was a relief that it was over. It was a relief that we got out the fine and only had to give 100 grand each instead of 800,000 or do a number of years. So that was a relief. I'll tell you what done me though was when after I got weighed off, sent to 12 and a half years. Being with your dad's pretty odd. You know what I mean?
For the first 2.
I was all the prison centres. I was with him.
The whole thing,
but not in the cell all the time. Yeah, done every day with him. It's hard. We nearly killed each other.
Wow.
I took a little bit of a liberty with him a few times because he wound up on the cannabis and it was getting him a bit stoned early days. And there's a funny story that goes with that. But funny story. I put a little bit of crack in his joint. I shouldn't have done it. Oh, mate, and he was getting married to a psychiatric nurse in the prison.
What?
And I'm sorry if I've offended, but my mate, he said, roll me a joint, the old man. So he's getting married. He was all dressed up. He was getting married. And foolishly, I don't know what made me do it, because I wasn't smoking it. It was a bit on the side. I put a bit of crack in his joint. Only a little bit, but he's never had it before. His tongue's and they call him from the chapel, Emmett! He's getting married. He can't talk. He's all right. And he's going to me, what you done? So I walk him into the governor's office with his fourth wife to be. It's a psychiatric nurse. I think that's why he married her. With the governor and the vicar, with the Bible open. So the governor said, what's the matter, Brian? I said, he's a bit nervous. And his wife was on it. She went, nervous? This is his 4th marriage. He shouldn't be nervous. I said, no. So I got a cupcake, whammed it in his mouth, orange, and after about 5 or 10 minutes he come round and he went to me with his mad eyes. He used to sleep with one eye open, my dad. He said, you wait. But that's all. It was like I was a kid. So that went on.
Did you go to trial then?
We went, in the end, there was about a 9-month trial.
9-month trial?
To come. It was 17 of us. It was abroad. Maybe not, it was a long trial.
Must have cost millions to do that.
But that was the deal. So they offered us to drop the first importation, which was the allegedly 10 tonne, that they charged us for 2.5 tonne because they drudged it up in the Bristol Channel. 4.5 tonne, plus the DTOA, which is the fine. So it looked like we was going to do about 18 stretch. But a miracle took place. And so the deal was, if you hold your hands up, my old man's never held his hands up. He said, no effort, my mate, I'm fighting this. And we held our hands up. We pleaded guilty to the second importation. They dropped the fine from 3 million to £400,000, which was easy to sort of whatever. And then we got 12.5 years and out the fine sort of thing. And that was it, and it was a relief. But I'll tell you, answering your question, the following morning when I wake up, they put how many days you're doing under your cell. It's the EDR, that's your early date of release, your latest date of release. But instead of years, it's in days, and I think mine was about 5,500. And it freaked me out. I thought, God almighty. And my stomach went over. But I got on with it. The old man, he was cool. But when he got weighed off, when he got sentenced, the old man, because he said to me, Dad, they changed the indictment to Peter Bracken and others, to Brian Emmett and others. And they said, you're the ringleader. We know who you are. Thank you that you've come to the mercy of the court, because he was pleading not guilty. He said, don't stand up. He said, I sentenced you to 12.5 years. So the young man went to him, you dirty bee. bastard. He said, you've sentenced me to death. So there's a little bit of noise and a bit of... My mum, a very humble woman, my mum, but her son had died, her dad had died, and her other son was getting 12 and a half years, and her husband. She let out a noise, out of her scream, out of her... She was devastated, my mum. My dad's turned round and tried to whack Le Monnier. He was the French connection. So there's carnage. The judge said, I told you, I knew I was right. He never murmured. This is where he was tough, the old man. He never said a word after that. He never come home till he was 70. So it's a big chunk, I suppose, to miss out your life. But listen, he had a touch. I think he served about 6 years, the old man. He had a result, really, after all what he'd been up to. International crime from the States with that Mafia mob, facts. From Italy, Holland, Spain. So to serve 6 years out of what he'd done, I would say he was quite lucky, the old man.
So once you were sentenced then, did you have to go to a different prison?
Well, once we were sentenced, we should have been on the book there by, this is what I got told by the chaplaincy. Excuse me, as a Cat A prisoner, which we never went to. And the security that was on us when we was going to courts with guns, armed officers, it was pretty intense. So we're now in Exeter Prison doing what we want to do. I got Samantha Fox to come down. She's a friend of mine, Sam, and she presented all these sort of disabled kids with a prize, and there was a video, and I nicked the video and smuggled it out of jail. It was a fantastic video. Got in trouble by the governor, but I said, you ain't having that back. I nicked the PO, who was a cracking, Roy DeBell his name was, he said, you can watch one of those videos. And it was the video of Sam and my wife, and we was all in the church, and we got Samantha Fox in the prison. She was great, Sam. And then we had that on video. I've nicked the video, and they've got the that I've nicked the video, and I said, you can't have it back. I had an unofficial sort of briefing from the governor, and he went, you're leaving my jail because you're running it. We had Ray Reardon come down, the snooker star.
I remember him.
We had him playing snooker there, all raising money for kids. Jimmy White got involved, the snooker player. So all that was going on, and I think we outgrew the place, and they sent us up to the London jails. So we went from there, me and the old man and another kid who I was pals with, a kidnapper, him and his mate. They come up with us, and then we went into the London jail, Swaleside, then Maidstone with Reggie Kray and all that, and then we wound up in Blantyre, Latchmere, and home.
What was Reg Kray like?
He was all right, Reg. He was all right, because in that interim period, my brokenness, I needed recovery. Yeah, so I found myself in the chapel, and okay to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in the chapel, where Samantha Fox was part of a church in London called Holy Trinity Brompton. And I'm not religious, I'm more spiritual, which I believe the faith that I follow is based, they call it the Holy Spirit. And trust me, I'm not trying to convert anybody, but it changed my life. I'm 21 years sober. I'm still, I'm not perfect. I'm a work in progress, but I'm better than I was last year. I've had lots of bad affairs with women. I haven't been great. And I've let a lot of people down. But in prison, I sort of gravitated to the church via Samantha Fox. There was a group of people come down from the church. There were some prayers, there's some stuff that went on. My friends were going, what are you doing? But from that abuse, the child abuse, having my dad like he was, my genetic DNA, my grandfather committed suicide, my dad was a bit crazy, so I had that going on as well. And I was always trying to fulfill something that wasn't real. It wasn't a reality. And in the, they say we're powerless over our addictions. We try to fix ourselves on wine, booze, women, drugs, money, ego, pride. None of it works. So I was looking for a way out, and I had a real experience, and I can't deny the experience. It happened to me, and it was part of God, part of Jesus, and it happened to me, and it was very hard for me to go back on the landing. And all my mates going, "What's going on with him?" The old man came in and he played around a little bit, but it was very profound, and something happened. And I'm a very sort of an unusual man. If something's true and I've seen it, I am not going to deny it. And in my own madness, my melody of my own spirit, I needed a better fix than cocaine, masturbating, taking drugs in the nick. I've always had two women, and I don't mean to be egotistical or decry women, but the two women, my affairs have always been the child abuse and my mother. So I replicated that story in my life with women. So I always had a wife and always had something on the side, which I'm not proud of today. But just to come into land with that, so a course started in prison. It was called the Alpha Course, which Samantha Fox helped me start with this church. So there was the corrupt Michael, and now the faith-believing Michael, and you know, I had tellies in the nick you weren't meant to have. I was getting cannabis in the nick you weren't meant to do, and I was doing all them things. So in the process of change, it wasn't hard to stop those things. What was hard to change, and I'm still doing it today, is the way I think, is what motivates me, what I'm driven by. An addiction is a very cunning and baffling, and we're powerless over it. So it's like a spiritual operation I needed, because it played with my way I thought, my mental health. I could only do something in life if I had a fix to go with it. So I moved through the prison system and this Alpha group and this Alpha course, Blue, and went round the world. And it's very big today. A lot of prisoners have done Alpha in prison. And he had the guy the other day, lovely Shane, he'd done it, terrific guy.
Yeah, Shane Taylor hooked us up. And if you've not seen Knife Maniac's Redemption, it's definitely in the top 10 podcasts we have filmed. For this guy to go from such extreme crime to turn his life around and meet his victims and do such good work now, it's really profound. So that's in the True Crime podcast. I'll put the link in the description box below this video.
Oh, bless you.
So you said there was an event that sparked your epiphany?
Yeah.
What was the event?
Well, we invite these people down. A guy called Nicky Gumbel, he runs the big church. He's great, Nicky. And in this church, it's a celebrity church as well. There's the congregation are wealthy, but they're not. They work with the homeless. They work with the prostitute. They work with a drug addict. They work with a homeless. They work with everybody. A great church, big congregation. So my wife then was friends with Samantha Fox, and Sam was at Holy Trinity Brompton. Now I'm looking for moves, Sam Fox, Ray Reardon coming down. I'm looking for angles constantly because I can't sit with Michael. I need a fix. So Sam's at the church. My wife, Daniela, the Spanish-Italian lady, she said, look, go in the church. I said, yeah, I'll go in it and get a few phone calls. So I start to gravitate to that. And I was unwell. I was using a lot of drugs in the nick. And Sam introduced me to the leaders of the church. So they straight away, they think they've got a soul saved. I'm not looking to be saved. I'm looking for an angle. I'm definitely looking to be saved. So they come down, and I kid you not, something happened in that room. There was about 30 guys, and they said a prayer. And I know something happened in that room. And people might say, oh, you're stoned, you're looking for something, and it's a weakness. We're taught that surrender is weak. Well, for me, to surrender was powerful. To follow something against the grain of what all my friends thought, I had a reality. It was true, and I held on to it. It was my olive branch, and I took it. And I struggled with it. But there was such a profound feeling. It touched me more than when I watched my children being born. And I thought to myself, my God, this is true. And I had hope. I had hope. And there's been days when I don't think it's true. There's been days when I want to walk away from it. But it hooked me.
And did it hook you sufficiently to stop doing the drugs at that point?
Yeah.
Just like that?
Overnight.
Overnight.
Wow,
that's powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely. For me, it was.
Because
I didn't know I was going to stop puffing. And I was on it constantly. It was my fix. So I had to be something powerful to exchange. And it was very, very powerful for me. And I have no doubt it's real. And you know what? When I look above, and I don't want to get over the top here, but when we look at the moon and where we are in space and there's stars and the air we breathe, something must be going on. We can't kid ourselves. It's not a postcard. There's not electrician up there that when Australia and England swap times, there's not someone turning the light. The world's moving and you think, it's that. And I don't want to go over the top with that, but for me, I have a lovely faith. I'm not the perfect Christian or faith-believing man, and I've messed up so many times that I have tested their love.
How many years into your prison sentence did you have this epiphany?
Well, it was quite quick, actually.
Was it?
About a year.
A year?
About maybe a year to 40.
But you already did 2 years on remand,
No,
so 3 years total.
No, this is when I was on remand. When I was on remand. The angle of looking for something to do, or like with Samantha Fox getting her down there and going into the chaplain's office to use the phone, I didn't expect a group of people to come round from the church.
She was so famous when I was a kid. I had no idea that she did this type of work.
Yes, she did.
Is she still doing this kind of thing?
I don't think so. I think she's a spiritual kid.
Yeah.
And I was at her 50th party. I haven't seen her for a number of years, Sam.
Yeah.
But she was always a bundle of fun and love. And I think she had her own. We're all looking for something, aren't we?
Yes.
We're all looking for something, and whatever rocks your boat.
Yeah.
But she introduced me to it, yeah. And it just, it means reading the Bible. What I struggled with at first. I don't concentrate that well. I'm getting better. And then I started the Bible was something I respected. Like, I'd never nick anything out of church. I'd never spit in church grounds. And I was always and I had a very religious grandmother, and who was lovely, Mary. So it was around me, and I used to say my prayers as a kid. And so I've been in recovery for 21 years, NA, and I think we shouldn't broadcast that, but I am. And so it couples itself. And I'm not the best, I'm not the worst, but I do a lot of work with the church, and I really, really enjoy it. When I see the likes of Shaun, it makes it worthwhile.
Did you read much in prison?
The early days in my previous sentences I got into Wilbur Smith and all that, but then I started trying to read the Bible, and I struggled. Did I read a lot? I was quite active in prison. No.
How did you pass your time?
Well, I had a million things. I was a gym orderly, so I was out all the time. I used to cook my own food. By the time I got back to my cell, pre my faith days, I'd have a joint and go to sleep. But once that happened, do you know what? It's funny because we're creatures of habit. So we regulate to our times. So once you had a full day in the nick, out in the gym, training, coming back, had your dinner, had a little naughty telly you weren't meant to have, your lights out, bump, you're asleep by 10 and up at 6 the following day. So that was how my day was.
Did you have a workout regimen then?
Working out what, training?
Training.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you do?
Well, I used to be I was a gym orderly, so I used to play a lot of badminton, a lot of five-a-side football, and I used to do weights. But I wasn't a big weight man, but I used to do... And in other nicks, there was a swimming pool in Maidstone. You asked me about Reg, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so should I talk about Reg?
Yeah, please tell us what you can.
So when I arrive in... he wrote about me in his book, Reg. Excuse me. About being a Christian, and I found it really difficult at first. When they used to shout out RC's for chapel, my toes used to curl. I thought, and all my mates go, "You going to chapel, Michael?" And I go, "Yeah." And I'd say to the officer, "Do you mind? There's only a few of us who go. Why don't you just come to the cell and say church?" And the whole church the whole wing used to hear it, and everyone would go on the Spurs, "You going to church, mate?" And I'd go, and I had to go. There was something in that for me that I had to go. And I wasn't looking for perfection, I was looking for freedom. So when I arrived down in Maidstone, Reg, who knew Dad, and there was a lot of people there who knew us, some heavy duty, the Class A sort of criminals. And they went, "You in the church?" So, yeah, I need it. It was that sort of, But I kept going. And with Reg, bless him, he was, funny story with Reg, some great stories with Reg. you know, he was very popular. And he used to always be on the phone. He couldn't see properly. I got some great stories about Reg. So my friends, I used to know a guy, he was the drummer for the Sex Pistols. And my pal come to see me, Adam, on a visit with his girlfriend. And if you had a visit and Reg liked someone, he'd always be inquisitive. And he used to be along the landing from me. And he knew me dad, and where I was sort of doing this face stuff, he quite liked it. He had all sort of Red Indian sort of things in his cell. It was like a wigwam in there. He used to sit on the floor, and he was a strange boy. But I liked him. I found him a real sweetheart, Reg. And we used to do the landing clean together. And he couldn't see, and he was always drunk, bless him. I don't mean that horribly, Reg. And he used to have all these, you know, these little yellow stickers that you write your notes on. They was all up his arms who he had to ring. He must used to get, the amount of letters he got every day was unbelievable. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. We've become friends. He'd be on the phone. We're all chatting away. So my mate on the visit, Adam, Reg says, "Who's there?" He had a white lisp. He said, "Who's there?" So I said, "It's Adam." Anyway, they get acquainted. He sends Adam a painting which Adam's got, and he signed it Reggie Kray. And he also sent him a photograph with him, Charlie and Ron. And Adam put them in frames. Well, round at Adam's house, the drummer out of Sex Pistols was there. So, and that's when they relaunched their career in 1996, yeah, the Sex Pistols. So they've seen the picture of Ron and Reg and that. How do you know him? He said, "Oh, Michael's in the jail with him." So they said, "Could you ask Michael if they could get a picture of Ronnie and Reggie Kray that no one's ever seen, and they would make it the cover for the album?" So I say, they asked me, I say, "Yeah, I'd do it." When it's drove Reg mad. So he said, he keeps calling them spitting images. I said, "Reg, it's the Sex Pistol, mate." Drove me nuts. I've got him a deal, right? I've got him a deal to be on it. So he's gone to me on the phone, yeah, the solicitors are getting involved. I said, "You're going to get a few quid here," with his bifocals. He couldn't see a thing, Reg. He come out of his cell one day with his glasses on that Ronnie had given him, and had an hearing aid on the side and his glasses, and he'd had a few glasses of hooch, and he's come on the wing and went with his glasses off. He said, I can see without my glasses. Michael Emmett's prayed for me." I went, "Reg, please." He fell down the stairs. But he was a lovely old boy. Anyway, the Sex Pistols, spitting images, Reg, it's the Sex Pistols. Every day. Phone them up. Anyway, he comes up to me one day, he says, "Cancel that." I said, "Why is that, Reg?" He said, "Because they wrote a song about me and Ronnie, and it said me and Ronnie were a lot of bollocks." I said, "They didn't, mate." "Yeah, my mate told me upstairs, an old gay guy told him." I said, "They didn't." I said, "But if you cancel it, you cancel it." After 2 months of him terrorising me. Not terrorising me because he was all right, but asking me. Anyway, he cancels it, yeah. 2 days later, he comes and says, "Do that, no, get spitting images on the phone. I want to give him the photo. I've looked at 1 million photos that no one's ever seen of Ronnie Kray and Reg. They were weird in his cell. Will that one do it? That one do it?" Anyway, eventually he loses the deal, yeah. The fella who's told him a lie, he must have been about 70 or 80. They have a fight over it, and he loses the deal. But the last story of Reg, if you want a cracker,
yes,
yeah. We all, in Maidstone, there used to be wing football, yeah. So we organised a game for the over 50s. It's Reggie Kray, my dad, Joe Martin, who was doing 33 years, some lumpy people in there doing a long time. So we organised this football team. I'm the ref. They've all had a drink, all messing about playing football. And I don't want to, I'm not shopping the business about what goes on in prison, but everyone knows, everyone has a bit of a laugh. I'm the referee, and it's the game of football. It's 4-4. We want Reg, and he's only got little spindly legs now. He's drunk on the hooch, he's falling over, and everyone's shouting out, "Do it for Ronnie, Reg." He loved it. It goes to penalties. So I say to the kid in goal, "Dive to the left." And I say to Reg, knock it that way, Reg. Anyway, my 6-year-old grandson would have kicked the ball harder. It needed someone to blow it over the line. So as he's run up like that, he's kicked it, and the goalie wants to dive. It's one of them situations. He scores. We put him on our shoulders, and where he had his sort of ways, Reg, his private parts come out of his shorts.
Oh!
Listen, I don't mean to be crude. Can we carry on with this?
Yes.
And it's rubbing on the geezer's thing. So Reg is over the moon. He's like out sitting on the geezer's shoulders. He scored the winning goal, and we all start to sing, "We are the champions." He's crying, Reg. "We are the champions, my friend." Oh, he's being adored. We get back to the wing, and this is what happened. We come onto the wing, and he was allowed, there must have been some sort of rule that he could phone Ronnie or Charlie whenever he wanted to. Ronnie had died. So he phones up Charlie, who's in Belmarsh on the lockdown, because Charles Bronson had taken the Iranian there was 2 Iranian who took a plane hostage, I think. And so Bronson had taken the 2 Iranian hostages, took them in his cell and said, the people that they took hostage, Charles Bronson is now punishing them, and he's dragged them in the cell, covered himself in toilet, and they're sitting there. Now, we don't know that. So Reg has gone to the SO, "I want to phone Charlie." "No, you can't, I want to phone Charlie." And where he was a bit deaf, they used to attach this thing to the phone in the probation office. So we've all had a drink, had the game of football, we scored the winning goal, and we're in the all round by the probation officers. They phoned Charlie. And Charlie was a little bit intimidated by Reg, I think. Although Charlie was a lovely man, so was Reg. I don't want to say anything wrong here. Anyway, Charlie comes to the phone. What do you want, Reg? What do you want? He said, "Look, I can't talk to you. Charlie Bronson's taken the Iranian hostages. Took them hostage. They're in the cell. We're in a lockdown." So Reg went, "Don't worry about that, Charlie." He said, "I've just been involved in a shootout." He went, "What's gone on, Reg?" He went, "A fucking penalty shootout." I put the phone down. That's a true story. Excuse my French.
Did you hear any other stories about Bronson?
Not really. I know he was very friendly with Joe. I know he got stabbed a few times in prison. But not really. I used to hear about him, my dad, sort of Joe and things like that, but not really, no.
No matter how big your reputation in prison, there's always some dickhead who wants to test you. Did anyone test you?
No. I'll tell you why. I was a lot bigger than I am now. I've got all the scars on my head, so I looked the part. I weren't necessarily... I used to have a fight, but that weren't my game. I was game. But I think with knowing me dad, and my dad was an old-timer, I had it in Exeter with a kid who was a lump. He was from Devon.
Over what?
He just got a bit naughty and mouthy with me and tried to challenge me.
What did he say?
I can't remember what he said, but I had another kid down in Exeter. It was a Scottish kid who tried to stick it on me over the football, and that was a funny story. I said, "I'll have a fight with you in the recess," and my dad heard about it. My dad's 68, and my dad wants to protect me. I said, "Dad, drop me out, mate. Let me have the fight. Don't no one fight my son." So there was all that father-son going on. But when I got into the London jails, a couple of people, but not. I was with the right crowd. I always knew someone who knew my dad, and in the London jails, it was cool. It was cool.
Were you able to corrupt the guards in the London jails?
I can't answer that. But there's your answer.
Lowest moment while incarcerated?
My wife left me when I was in Maidstone. She had an affair. Bless her. I think the whole thing broke her heart. I had children with another woman, with my first wife Tracy. My second wife, who I was married to, Daniela, I think she felt threatened by my family.
That was the Italian lady.
My Italian lady. And she had an affair when we met someone when I was in Maidstone, and and I went over to Reg, funny enough, and everyone knew I felt embarrassed, but I was quite a well-liked chap, I think, in the prisons. I used to get up to things and get things that, one of the things you just mentioned, I used to have my own sort of little ways and means of getting what we needed, but I didn't take liberties, and so I was quite all right in the nick, and there's loads of stories I could tell you, but it would be unfair, and so I went to see Reg when she had the affair. We went over to church together, me and Reg, and we said a little prayer, and he said, son, he said, all I can tell you to do is you got to forgive them. But it was a very, very low moment. But in a way, I accepted it because I still had my children, I had my family. She was a lot younger than me as well. And we're still friends today, but that was my lowest moment.
Yeah. And how did it feel as you got nearer to the gate?
Well, when I got a few years off right at the end at the appeal courts.
So you had to do 4 then?
No, I done 5 years. The old man done
5.
6. So from expecting to do 9 years, I'm down to 5 years, which is 5 years is long enough, but it was okay. And
it's manageable, isn't it?
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Don't show on your shoes 5 years. And so I was in a working nick where you go out to work, which I was doing all sorts of naughty things. I weren't going to work, I was going home, and you do all them sorts of things. Well, I don't want to get in anyone's trouble because everyone does work really hard when they come out of prisons. And so there was that going on. So I started to it was an anticlimax really, because I'd come out a few times and I'd done a few things, and I used to get away with my bits and pieces. I'd done some funny things in the nick. That with charity work, I'd get out with charity work. All the chaps was getting out doing charity work. We used to work with MenCap. So that's another story. There's lots of stories there. But so it's an anticlimax when I come home, but I relapsed when I come home. I'd got clean in the prison, and I'd go into my church, and I come home and relapsed.
What was the temptation?
We're powerless if we ain't careful, and the temptation was being around friends who used, and no one wanted me to use cocaine, all my friends and family, because they knew where it took me. So I relapsed for a year, had another affair, which was very damaging for me. And then I got back on my feet again. And
how did you manage to get the mental strength to get back on your feet?
I think by the church. I started going to meetings. And do you know what? I think as it's gone on, I don't know how it is, but they talk about going through the narrow gate. And, you know, the good and the bad. And I think there's power in the belief and faith to believe. I think if you've got faith to believe, it changes the atmosphere. And so prayerful, going to church. I'd had another affair with my business partner's wife. It wasn't very nice. I put that out there. And I'm not making excuses, but it was a repeat of my own abuse. That don't make it right. So I'd had 2 major affairs, which I weren't happy about. I had a massive business with this guy. It cost me millions.
Did you end up in debt?
I'm mad debt. I was quite wealthy boy. Have you heard of the group Kasabian?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I was a share before they become Kasabian. They was called. I had them. I was part owner of them. I had a radio station down in Brighton. I had supermarkets abroad, and I'm not showing off. This is what I had. I had a flower business in London. I had a property portfolio in Spain.
And you lost it all?
I lost a lot. And got in debt with the wrong people. So it was a tough time, but I do believe that was my faith again.
Was it a drug debt then?
No. It was nothing to do with drugs. This was straight business. But someone stole some money off me. But I think it was an answer to prayer, because to be honest with you, I'm not saying it's okay to be wealthy. It really is. But it's what it means to you. It can't be an abuse of power. It can't be something you love, because it'll bite you on the backside. And so I built this sort of thing. You know, when I built the cannabis deal, I'd done it from the addiction of the drive, and I'd done it quickly. I'd done exactly the same with my private life. But instead of getting it right, I used to let the affairs, the women, all that sort of thing. And because I think I had a conscience, and I'm not a bad guy, it never sat easy with me. So I was always had this conflict. Even as a believer, I had this conflict. And my walk... I've just bought a book. I've just wrote a book, so you see that I haven't gone hallelujah, I'm saved. I'm a work in progress, like I've said, and it's changed me. It's changed the way I feel, what I do, and I'm getting there. But when I lost everything, I think it was a mask. I was hiding behind it. I was frightened. I was doing things that I shouldn't be doing. I was doing very well in business, and it wasn't helping me. And I'm not saying I don't want my money back, because I do. But someone stole from me. I got in trouble I went and borrowed from friends and family. Caused me a lot of aggravation. But in that, I found Michael. The loss of everything. My car was a Range Rover. I changed it every 2 years, and I'm not showing off. In the end, I couldn't afford an Oyster card. I had nowhere to live. All my family rallied round. I lost a lot. It was fortunes. But the only way I've accepted it is I think it was built on sand. It didn't have a good foundation. And eventually, if I hadn't lost it, I think maybe it had got taken from me from elsewhere. So I began my life again over the last few years.
What made you want to write the book?
Because the story is... I'm not saying I'm incredible, because I'm not. I'm quite a weak, vulnerable, strong man. I've got that opposite. I got asked to do it. I got asked to write the book by Harper and Collins, and I think it's a very unusual story that I'm here to tell it. I think it's and it's been drama after drama after drama after drama, after chaos after chaos after chaos. I've lived about 10 lives, but I'm at peace today, a lot more. I've got lovely children. I've got lovely grandchildren. I'm now with a New Zealand lady who's very kind and loving. So failed marriages, there's been so much I've been through, and I think there's hope in the book. I believe there's hope, and I think it's a good read. I think people identify it. It's not I'm in church now, I'm saved, I'm holier than now. It's, you know what, church is like an hospital. You can get well, and I think we all have our inner secrets that we don't want to admit because we're macho, our pride. You don't get many men going, I'm broken. But, you know, I think we're in a broken world as it is, and I don't want to get too into that. But there's hope, I think. I think hope's a biggie.
So for people watching this, the link to your book is in the description box below this video. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the people watching this?
Well, I'm not sure what your audience is, but, well, I am a little, people watching, you know, I hope some of it's made sense. Some say it's an exciting story, some say it's not. Not everyone's been happy with me. But I do think that the criminal fraternity that I've lived in, as much as it's exciting, there's no free lunches. Yeah. We reap what we sow. And I just think the word love, you know, I know we might be a few gangsters listening or some heavy people, but we've all got good hearts. We're all nice guys. And I just think today I learned to do something simple. And I think simple's best. And I think the word love is a verb to do. So I enjoy loving. I enjoy loving my neighbour. Not all the time, I want to chin them sometimes. But you know what I mean? So people out there, if you're looking for a way out, or if you're not, that's up to you. You know, I'm powerless over what anyone does. But all I'm saying, there is something out there that can set us free. And for me, it's the cross. And I'm not religious, and I'm not trying to preach to everybody, but it has changed my life.
It's nice to end on a message of love. Thank you very much for watching this, everybody. Please let us know in the comments what you thought about this video. Huge thank you to the new subscribers. Subscription logo is in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Huge thank you to people who've gone down in the description box, checked out Michael's book, followed our socials. people who've donated as well. Those links are down there, so we can film these podcasts in a studio with James and Joe. And thank you also for all of your guest suggestions. So hope you've enjoyed it. All right, give us a hug, man. Cheers. Well done. Brilliant storytelling. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Terrific.